into the shadows.
Hello, welcome to webinar today. My name is Liz. I use she, her pronouns, and today we're going to be talking about teen dating violence and LGBTQ plus youth. Okay, so LGBTQ, sometimes referred to as LGBTQIA+, is used to describe the gender expansive and queer community. Who here knows what that acronym stands for? Put in the chat, raise your hands. Say yes. Yeah, Annie got it. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, and queer. So Annie got it perfectly. And it also includes this plus sign, which signifies the multiple other identities that are not included in this abbreviation. What are some of the identities included in this plus sign that are not on this list? Intersex, yeah. Intersex is definitely one of them. Asexual. Aromantic. Yeah, so this expansive list includes both gender identities and sexual orientations. What's important to note is that these are two very different things. Although sometimes they're related, one's gender does not determine their sexual orientation, nor vice versa. Because of this difference, researchers have to distinguish which facet of the community they might be studying. So gender expansive folks or queer folks are different communities. Most research has solely been done on queer folks, people with different sexual orientations. So for the purposes of our discussion today, we're also going to be focusing on the sexual orientation and LGBTQ plus couples. More research is needed to help us better understand the experiences and dating violence of gender expansive folks. With that said, let's talk more about what sexual orientation is and the framework we're going to be discussing it from today. So sexual orientation is the different forms of attraction, behaviors, and identities. Sexual, physical, romantic, and emotional attraction are four major ways that people have differentiated forms of desire. How someone experiences attraction might differ across these forms of desire. Someone might experience more emotional attraction to a person than sexual. What questions do we have about these different forms of attraction, if any? Okay. How does romantic differ from emotional? And then between sexual and physical as well. Yeah. So sexual attraction is something that we feel primarily like sexually, those things where you want to have sexual interactions with someone, whereas physical attraction might be more of like wanting just to touch them, have that friendship. If you are the kind of person where you have different friends that you're like, I want to hug them more, I'd rather cuddle with them. That might be physical attraction. You can still have those things without having sexual attraction. And same kind of goes for romantic and emotional attraction. You can romantically want to be involved in a person and not be necessarily emotionally invested in them in the same way, or be emotionally invested in someone, but not want to have a romantic relationship with them. A good thing to look at with this is maybe like people that you distinguish as friends versus people you want to have a relationship with. You might be physically or emotionally attracted to one of your friends and that you want to have those physical experiences with them. You want to touch them, you want to hug them, you want to hold their hand. You want to be emotionally connected to them, but you may not want to get sexually or romantically involved with them. Does that make sense? Okay, let's go more into about sexuality. So some people say that sexuality looks like this, as women and women, girls and girls, boys and boys, men and men, or boys and men, or girls and women being attracted to each other. Is this binary between girls and boys? Other people are going to say it looks more like it's on the spectrum. So it could be you're attracted to boys or men kind of down here, attracted to girls or women over here. And there's some people that fall in this middle space and maybe are attracted to both or lean more towards one or the other, but are attracted to both. For our purposes today, we're going to be talking about attraction in this conglomerate. There are any number of ways an individual can experience attraction, and an individual can be attracted to any genders. That's where this plus sign comes into context. So there is a limitless number of identities that a person can have. And sexuality is complex and non-restrictive. That's one of the really cool parts about being in the queer community. One's identity can fall anywhere on this blob of sexuality, and it might move throughout it as one goes through life. Okay, so let's review some of the identities that you might not have heard of, or you may have. So heterosexual means a cisgender person who is attracted to another cisgender person of a different gender. So like a cis man who's attracted to a cis woman. This is otherwise known as straight. Cisgender means that one's gender identity aligns with their sex assigned at birth. So if you were born with female genitalia and assigned a woman, and you grow up and your gender identity aligns with that, you feel like a woman, and that's how you identify, then that means you're cisgender. Lesbian means a woman who is attracted to other women. Gay means a man who is attracted to other men. And bisexual means that you're attracted to two or more genders, not necessarily men and women. That can be any genders in particular, but two or more. Pansexual means that you're attracted to all genders. Does not matter what the person identifies as. Your sexual attraction is not limited to that. And asexual, or often referred to as ace, means no sexual attraction. Queer is an umbrella term that generally refers to any attraction besides heterosexual. It's also used for people who aren't quite sure where they identify on this blob, or their gender identity doesn't fit in with any particular gender and they don't know how to describe themselves. They might just refer to themselves as queer. None of these are strict attractions, and a person may not feel any of these common labels fit how they're attracted to other people. They may not align with any single one of these on these lists, and they might have another word that they use to describe their attraction, even if it's similar to one of these. This complex and diverse approach to understanding sexuality allows for individuals to explore what labels fit best, and it creates space for every individual to feel included no matter how they experience attraction. So, to summarize all that we just learned, sexuality is complex and diverse. You might have noticed in the title that the acronym looked like this, LGBTQ+. As I mentioned earlier, today we're going to be talking about LGBTQ+ youth, or lesbian, gay, bisexual, queer, and all other sexual orientations beyond heterosexual. Gender identity is important to keep in mind when we talk about sexuality, as the labels for different forms of attraction might change based off the gender one identifies with. However, it's really important that we acknowledge that gender and sexuality are different identities, and the experience of a cis queer person may be different than that of a trans or gender expansive person, despite their sexuality. As I touched on earlier, there is limited research on dating violence within the trans and gender expansive community that inhibits me from getting any definitive information to you. So for our purposes today, we're going to be talking solely about LGBTQ+ youth. Before we talk about dating violence in these relationships, are there any questions about what we just reviewed? Okay. We are going to do a little quiz. So feel free to throw your answers in the chat and we'll see what we think they are as we go throughout this. So for question number 1, who is most likely to experience dating violence? Is it heterosexual woman, LGBTQ+ women, heterosexual men, or LGBTQ+ men? I'll give you about 30 seconds to pick an answer and throw it in the chat. Okay, Annie and Olivia both said B, LGBTQ+ women. Good job! Yes, LGBTQ+ women do experience dating violence more frequently than other groups. What is most evident in the research done is that LGBTQ+ women have the highest odds of experiencing dating violence and sexual violence victimization than any other group. Not only are they over 4 times more likely to experience dating violence, but odds ratios are marginally higher than any other group. LGBTQ+ men are also significantly more likely to experience dating violence than heterosexual women and heterosexual men. Okay, our next question. LGBTQ plus youth are 2.4 times more likely to experience dating violence than heterosexual youth. Is this true or false? Okay, Annie and Olivia both said true. Good job, guys. You're killing it. Yes, LGBTQ plus youth are 2.4 times more likely to experience dating violence than heterosexual youth. So not only are they 2.4 times more likely to experience dating violence, they're also specifically at a higher risk to experience physical dating violence, psychological dating abuse, cyber dating abuse, and sexual coercion within a relationship. Something unique about this is the cyber dating abuse. Because options for partners and queer friends are more limited for queer youth, many of them have utilized the internet to connect with other members of the LGBTQ plus community. Many queer youth have long-distance relationships and primarily communicate with their partners and friends online without knowing them in person. And this puts them at a higher risk for cyber dating violence than heterosexual youth specifically. Okay, question number 3. What percentage of LGBTQ plus youth acknowledge perpetrating dating violence? Okay, Olivia says A, 26%. Let's see what Annie says. D, Annie says 54%. Okay, so the answer is C, 41%. A study of dating violence experiences of LGBTQ plus individuals done at a university reported that 41% of participants acknowledged perpetrating physical violence within the context of their adolescent dating relationships. Further, 88% of participants acknowledged perpetrating psychological aggression. Although this is only one study and research is limited, we know that queer individuals experience dating violence at significantly higher rates, which can allow us to speculate that perpetrating rates may also be consistently higher. Okay, and our last question. Bisexual men experience dating violence 2 times more frequently than heterosexual males. Is this true or false? Okay, Annie and Olivia both say true. So although this is true, it's technically actually false. So bisexual men have nearly 4 times the odds of heterosexual men for experiencing some type of abuse, or that's physical, psychological, or sexual. And they also have over 5 times the odds of gay men for being threatened to be outed by their partner. What questions do we have about the statistics that we just covered? Well, these past 4 questions. Okay, it looks like no further questions from Annie. Give Olivia a second if she does. Okay, no questions. Awesome. Okay. On top of the prevalence of dating violence and LGBTQ plus relationships, there are unique sets of problems that queer folks run into while dating. So let's look at some of the specific dating issues that LGBTQ plus individuals face. Watch this video.
Hi, my name is Chloe Marianne, a new animator at Psych2Go. I'm animating this episode for you today. Enjoy!
Dating is rough for everybody, but is being queer an extra hurdle to jump over in the effort to find love? We at Psych2Go say yes. There are many unique problems that those in the LGBT community face during their time on the dating scene. Without further ado, here is a list of 8 dating problems the LGBT community faces. Number 1. Casual racism. A recent study on gay dating preferences shows that 80% of black men, 79% of Asian men, and 75% of South Asian men have all endured racism in their efforts to date. Many people of color also experience fetishization. Black men are messaged in the hopes that they'll be aggressive or masculine. Asian men are often messaged because they might seem cute or submissive. How do women compare? Fairly better, actually. Queer women are less likely to be affected by ethnicity and more open to interracial dating. Number 2. Fat and femme shaming. The queer community is full of individuals with different body types and gendered energies. This includes some of us who are a little on the skinny side, or weigh a few extra pounds, or exude some feminine energy. The unfortunate truth is, gay culture does not deem these traits desirable. In our world today, muscles and manliness win over femininity, which many mistakenly consider subordinate and lesser. Number 3. Hookup culture. Believe me, when you're looking for a hookup or a friends with benefits type situation, this can be great. This is not to say that there aren't queer people who are searching for a deeper connection, but if you are looking to get to know someone before they stick their hands down your pants, this can be extremely frustrating. It's not easy talking to someone you've just met only for them to ask you about your sexual preferences and what your genitals look like. Number 4. Not enough fish in the sea. Growing up in an urban cityscape can be the best thing in the world for a queer person looking for options. Whether you're in New York, LA, Tokyo, or London, there is endless opportunity for you to find the person of your dreams. Not in a city packed with people? The odds are less in your favor. It's hard for a queer person in a small town or sparsely populated area to meet potential partners. Don't give up. Dating in a small town does not mean that you're doomed. Number 5. Are they even into you? Sure, there are some common tells that could give us some insight on whether someone is LGBT, but sometimes the only way to know is to ask. Is she into women or not? Can you get a guy to fall in love with you even though he keeps calling you his bro? For the LGBT community, this is a common obstacle. Number 6. Dating while closeted. Let me preface this point by saying that many people choose to keep their sexual identity a secret for a range of reasons, including the preservation of their personal safety. That being said, it is hard to date while you are still in the closet. It can be mentally and emotionally exhausting to keep the person you love a secret. It can also be just as exhausting for your partner, who must help you maintain a double life in order for your relationship to continue. For these reasons, those who date while in the closet may experience relationship strain. Number 7. Dating with HIV. HIV is still a huge taboo in the LGBT community today. Modern medicine has come a long way over the past few decades, and HIV is no longer a death sentence. But those who live with HIV-positive statuses are shunned from the dating scene because of this same fear and the misconceptions many of us have of HIV. While it is still important to take safety measures, HIV is an obstacle that can be overcome by couples. It is important to remember that people with HIV are not dirty or deserving of their status in any way, and it's totally possible to have a healthy, safe relationship with an HIV-positive individual. Number 8. Transphobia. Dating can be rough if you're trans. Trans and non-binary individuals still receive a great deal of harassment in regards to their gender, sex, and appearance. Trans and non-binary people also have the added stress of deciding if and when to disclose their identity to dates and partners. Many trans people who are simply looking to get to know someone often find themselves fetishized. Now keep in mind, the LGBT community is diverse, and a few of these problems are directed more to some than they are to others. The first step to solving these problems is awareness. The LGBT community and its supporters have the ability to shed light on these issues so that they can be met with love and acceptance. So what do you think? Are there any problems that we've missed? Let us know. Are there any items on this list that you
Okay. So what are some dating problems that you think of that weren't mentioned in this video? What would you have said in the comment section below when they said, what did we miss? And if you aren't sure, that's totally okay. Yeah. If you can't think of them, it's totally fine. They hit on a lot of the big ones, so. And he said people not respecting asexuality. Yeah, that is a serious problem in the queer community. Not everybody is as accepting of asexuality as maybe they should be. A lot of people don't necessarily consider it to be in the queer community as well, even though it is a sexuality. It's definitely a part of this whole community. Give you a few more seconds to think of one. Yeah, it's totally okay. So a prevalent one that's mentioned in the comments under this video is biphobia. So we discussed earlier that bisexual men experience abuse at higher rates than straight men and are threatened to be outed at higher rates than gay men. So bi women also experience significantly higher rates of abuse in relationships. And the primary cause of this is biphobia. Whether they're in a straight presenting relationship or a queer one, a bi person may not be considered gay enough by other members of the queer community, and they may be teased or shamed for being in a straight relationship. However, they might also not be considered to be straight enough by their partners. They may struggle with significant jealousy from their partner or stigma from friends and family due to the stereotypes of bisexual people being unfaithful. In queer relationships, they might be bullied as well for having had sexual intercourse with people who were of a different sex than their partner. And that is a problem sometimes. That can bring up some really hard topics and some conversations that people don't want to have. And it can be something that people use as weapons of power and control over their partners. Oh, that's not what I meant to do. There we go. So LGBTQ plus relationships are not inherently different from heterosexual relationships. All healthy relationships are built on mutual trust, care, and healthy communication, just as all relationships are. The differences between queer and heterosexual relationships are sourced externally. Societal norms, institutional policies, organizational practices, resources available, community conversations, etc. All influence these things. They all influence how people participate in the relationship, view their own queerness, and act as a couple. So if it's not something inherent about being queer, then what is it? We've just seen a number of ways that queer youth are more susceptible to be involved in dating violence, whether that be as a perpetrator or a survivor. And it's not due to anything inherent about being queer. So what makes LGBTQ plus youth more likely to experience dating violence? What are the sources that put queer youth at higher risk for teen dating violence? If you aren't sure, that's totally cool. I'll definitely explain it. Feeling afraid to talk about the abuse, being afraid to disclose. Yeah, it's definitely scary to bring that up, especially when you're young and you're not sure what your identity is. On top of having the fear of getting in trouble for the abuse and whatever that relationship might be with your friends and family, you also are worried about outing yourself by talking about your partner. Internalized homophobia. Yes, that's what Olivia said. Annie said, misleading gender stereotypes about what abuse looks like. Yeah, they might not be able to identify abuse within the relationship if they have those gender stereotypes about what it would look like. So Annie and Olivia hit on definitely some key points here. So the short answer is homophobia. Homophobia, both internalized and from external sources, creates challenges and dynamics that are unique to LGBTQ+ relationships. Internalized homophobia manifests itself in a number of ways, but is problematic in relationships. Not only does someone struggling with internalized homophobia have harmful beliefs about themselves, but they might also treat their partner poorly due to these beliefs. Internalized homophobia can cause feelings of low self-esteem, powerlessness, and self-destructive behaviors that can lead to verbal and physical perpetrations of violence, and it has been associated with greater risk of unwanted sexual experiences. It can present itself as fetishizing specific races, body types, or genders, leading to racism, body shaming, and transphobia. It can also be found in hookup culture, as monogamy is sometimes viewed as only for straight people by some people, causing individuals who do desire monogamy to struggle in finding a healthy relationship within their boundaries. And these things, there's nothing wrong with any of those things, but they do come from these places of internalized homophobia. It's also seen through the fear of HIV positive people. Stigma from the HIV/AIDS epidemic still lingers, and it may be internalized through fear and judgment of HIV positive people. Other significant aspects of dating issues for LGBTQ+ individuals are sourced by external homophobia. Individuals who are not out have added challenges in their relationships. Being in a community that is unwelcoming to queer folks or with a small population limits the options for dating. It also can be an added point of confusion, especially for youth who might not know if someone they like is interested in them as anything more than friends. The question of, do they like me back, that we have when we're young and in looking for relationships, is prefaced with, do they like my gender like that, for queer youth? In communities where it's safe to be out, this question poses an even higher risk of exposing oneself to their peers. Not only are each of these challenges to dating in the queer community, there are also means by which a partner could exert power and control in a relationship. So let's dive in on some more specific issues that put LGBTQ+ youth at risk for dating violence. One of them is coming out. Coming out is a unique process to any individual. And as the video said, not every youth has supportive, safe people in their life or an environment they can come out to and may be in the closet for a long time. This can create dynamics in a relationship where one or both partners has to keep the relationship a secret in public or with certain people in their lives. This may be a point of conflict for many couples because the partners are not able to be as public about their relationship as other couples. Resentment can build with this, and as keeping a relationship a secret out of fear for one's safety is stressful, and can feel like one's partner is ashamed of them. That's not how you want to feel in a relationship. And the secrecy can also be used as means of power control for an abusive partner, as they can threaten to out their partner as a way to coerce them into something. This is a unique dynamic in some queer relationships, particularly for youth. Additionally, in our healthy relationship curriculum for domestic violence services, we talk about knowing yourself as being fundamental to setting necessary boundaries based on your values and beliefs in order to have a healthy relationship. What does this mean for individuals that questioning their sexuality or gender identity? Shifting and adapting identities can be confusing, especially when you're with a partner. Not only are there limited resources for youth to learn how to explore their identities, what they mean, and how to have those conversations with their partners, friends, or family about changing identities, it's also difficult to talk about if you're not sure what fits how you're feeling. If there's poor or unhealthy communication in a relationship, these questions can interfere with the relationships. The issues mentioned in the video may also be prevalent, as someone exploring their identity may experience homophobia, transphobia, or racism by their partner if they want to explore new identities. These forms of prejudice can result in abusive behavior. With all of these dating challenges and increased risks for dating violence, how do we support LGBTQ+ youth? So we can start with these. Ensuring our schools are inclusive in their healthy relationships and sex ed units, as well as in other aspects of student education, we can better support youth in their relationships and combat internalized homophobia. Adults can let queer youth know that they are supportive and can be trusted to talk to about any issues in the relationship or to ask questions about their identity. Having supportive adults can significantly reduce queer youth's likelihood of experiencing abuse. Further, the media can provide more representation of queer relationships and discuss more publicly the significant rates at which queer people experienced intimate partner violence. Although many communities are not accepting or safe for queer youth, it's becoming more common for them to be accepted and supported by their community, or at least within their social networks at school. Establishing safe spaces for queer youth creates aspects of their life where they can come out and more freely explore themselves, as well as be safe in their relationships. These can be places like youth centers, after-school programs, and extracurriculars. Finally, increasing available resources for youth is invaluable. The number of resources have steadily increased in recent years and are readily available to youth. However, capacity is limited. Establishing more local resources that can spend more time and energy on supporting queer youth specifically can be really valuable. It can help prevent dating violence and LGBTQ+ relationships overall. These resources can also allow more opportunities for the previously mentioned supports to be established in the community. Each of these works hand in hand with each other and can create a structure to help prevent dating violence within queer relationships. So what resources exist already for youth? The Trevor Project is a great resource for queer youth. They offer a 24-hour text, chat, and phone crisis line for any queer youth ages 13 to 25 in crisis or with any questions about their identity. They also have a number of educational resources for queer youth to learn more about different identities and the LGBTQ+ community. A highlighted one is the Coming Out Handbook, which discusses healthy relationships, exploring identities, and how to communicate one's identity to friends and family. They also have a social network called Trevor Space, where queer youth can connect with other queer youth and allies around the US to build a social network that supports them and have people in their lives that are also queer. The Northwest Network is an organization based out of Seattle that supports LGBTQ+ survivors of intimate partner violence. They offer relationship skills class as well as survivor support, including advocacy-based counseling, safety planning, legal advocacy, and referrals to other supports as the survivor leaves their relationships. This can be really helpful for those who are experiencing dating violence. And GLAAD, which stands for the Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation, has worked since the 80s to combat homophobic and stigmatic media representation of the queer community. They are champions for the queer community in civic engagement and political activism. They've also worked to spread information about HIV and AIDS and combat misinformation about those who live with it. They offer a number of supports for queer youth and those who are a part of the queer community to help further their mission. Each of these organizations has worked to create a world in which queer youth are supported and safe. Establishing this, giving these young people a world in which they can thrive, helps combat the issues that have led to such significant rates of abuse. By giving queer youth more support, we can offer them more skills and opportunities to have healthy relationships with themselves and their partners. So I'm going to put the links to each of these in the chat for those that are interested and want to check them out. And that's all I have for today. Thank you for coming to this webinar. What questions do we have? Okay, I'm going to put the sources up and see all the lovely information that I was able to get, the wonderful studies that have been done for the queer community. And with that, if you have any questions, feel free to stick around. If you have anything, leave them in the chat. Thank you for coming.